Welcome to the Broski Doodles podcast, the best podcast in all the land. We got a few of your favorites today. We got Tabo, we got DJ BJ, one of the best DJs in the very underground worlds. If you haven't heard of him, it's because you're not deep underground where he's known. I want to get right to the topic. Subscribe to the thing. You should see some animation happen now. We're paying a little more to our editors, so thankfully they're putting in the work. So you should already have the little things here, the little arrows and shit, so that you guys can be stimulated in your mind. But subscribe to the thing, leave some comment, and tell us, yo, Kiko, I don't agree with that shit, and you guys are fucking stupid, so that we can maybe use that, take the feedback, and grow from that. Last night I saw a movie. It's called The Winchester, and it has to do with a house in San Jose, California, about 30 kilometers from, or 30 miles from San Francisco, where Winchester, some lady called Sarah Winchester, who's the heir to the Winchester Rifle Company, people that, that originally did it. So I'm guessing it was like William Winchester, some guy probably was called. And I'm not going to talk about the movie. I wouldn't say it was the best movie, but it is based on a real story. Pretty much in 1906, the main guy from Winchester dies and 51% is left to this lady. And she feels that she's like, because her husband or her family created a killing machine, and on that note, one of the best, if not the best killing machine in the world, because the Winchester rifle is known to be like, one of the best, like mechanically speaking, especially when it was out like in 1864. Like this was how the Union won against the Confederates in the Civil War. I'm getting on tangents here, but I want to give you guys a little bit of context. So she starts feeling haunted by the spirits of people that have died by the Winchester. Like she starts to feel responsible. It's sort of like she's one of in the family that's now woke, and she's like, we shouldn't even be doing guns anymore. We should like make skates. And she like tells the board of directors, like, look, we should make like rolling skates. And they're like, bitch, we make guns. So the movie, she starts building. This is true. You can like look and YouTube documentaries on it. She starts building this house. It's a 7-story house with like over 100 rooms, and she will build each room by how the ghost told her it should be. That's how he died, so that he could be released, and then he could like solve his like unsolved issues, whatever. So because of all this shit, the company says, look, she owns 51% because she obtained this from the other guy, but she's fucking crazy, and we need to, so let's like get some doctor involved to say like, look, she's not fit. She's seeing ghosts and shit. She's not fit to own the company, so that we can take control, right? So the whole movie is based on like a doctor that goes to her house and tries to study her and analyze her. So why am I saying all of this? She pretty much was haunted by the thought that her family created a killing machine. And yes, depending on who uses it, you could use it for good or for evil, but you're still killing, right? So I wouldn't say this is a Second Amendment debate, but I guess we will touch on it because it's part of it. But when it comes to weapons and guns, do you think that is something that shows the progress in humanity, or is something that eventually will collapse our civilization?
That's an interesting one. Guns and their origin, and how it pertains to this issue. You see, back before the civilized world, we would be using like rocks and sticks to fight with each other, and it wasn't until we created projectiles. Not necessarily guns at first, but like, throw things that we could launch or throw without having to inflict like physical pain in melee distance or combat. That's when you really saw civilizations that begin to grow, to expand, colonize and all that stuff. It modernized war, which in turn some of the advancements that we have today in our society come from the combat, from war. Like certain advancements in medicine come from having to be used in a combat situation or in a war scenario. So indirectly, guns do demonstrate an advancement in society, because the more advanced the gun, the more advanced the society is to produce that advanced gun.
Even if
That's how,
the use of it is to kill and to
even if
terminate life.
for the protection of the rights, for the pursuit of liberty, happiness, and justice, or whatever the words are. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with that.
Okay.
But
Just a quick thought here, a quick question, parenthesis. Are you also pro life? So is the bigger question here that, as bad as it might sound and as ugly as it is, not just guns, but weapons and killing tools allow us to conquer and thus improve the people in our little tribe, and thus that creates better technology that the whole world can benefit from. Like I said, a sweet and sour shot that we cannot separate both. Is there a way to grow without stomping on others, or is it necessary to do so for humanity to progress? I mean, I'm not asking this like I don't know,
I
I
give
don't
you
know.
some perspective. Let's get some perspective on it, right? So there's this feeling where if your back is against the wall, you will do anything to survive. Let's start there, right? So if your enemy is pushing you to a certain point where I either need to destroy them or I die, I want to get to that mental state, right? So if we're there, the amount of creativity and focus becomes unreal. You ever get to the point where it's just like, I don't care about anything but this one task, right? In that mental state, I think it may have happened to you, where like when you're like whether you're doing homework or you're taking a test. There you go. Oh, taking a test is actually a good example. Like when you're taking a test, you're like your focus is nothing but this test because you're gonna fail if let's go with like a college level final, stuff like that. Like your focus is there because you don't think of anything else. So what this does when you're at like the crisis focus, it's like I need to make this weapon or we are dead. It eventually led to like the bombs we have because it was like we need like the stress and everything's like we don't make this, it's over. So we can like the initial intent is to like just survive and do well, but when we get to the point where like what we created, it kind of goes back to the Jurassic Park. Like we were too busy figuring out if we could. We didn't stop to think if we should.
Damn.
That's kind of the bring it back to Jurassic
Like
Park.
pretty much, would you say we're at that stage where we created the Tyranno, the Rex mixed with the Predator or whatever the
Yeah.
Raptor, and now there's like 5 of them around the world, and we're like, fuck.
And we brought
we-
upon our own to save ourselves. We brought our own demise to us.
It's a bit fucked because like I just finished watching Gladiator, right? Which is again top 10. We're gonna review it on our movie review with the crew. But when you watch the movie, you're like, fuck, like, because they glorize that type of shit. Like the opening scene is they're beating the fuck out of the barbarians in Germania, right? And you're like, yeah, motherfuckers, like we can't. Like, do you think it's just regardless of what stage we are in humanity, there's always gonna be this tribal thing where like, oh, I have this land, but we might be better if we have their land too, and it's just inevitable. Like, it's just gonna be just because like, and it seems that like, for example, let's take a look at World War II because it's a little bit easier to relate. They had this issue with Germany and Japan, right? And Japan didn't want to give up. So they're like, look, we need to create something that we can like really put an end to this. Japan wasn't gonna give up, and it was gonna take a lot of lives to invade Japan. Because when you're in the attacker side, it's always harder, right? When you're on the defending, you have a lot of advantages. So even though Japan was hurt at that time, it was gonna take a lot of American lives to invade Japan. So they're like, okay, like you said, Tavo, crisis focus mode. We create a nuclear fucking bomb. Well, I didn't, Albert Einstein and a few other guys, and and they drop those fuckers, right? And that cost, each of those bombs cost over 70,000 deaths, and like they could have caused those deaths in a day of pure like plane bombing, right? But it was to show them, look, what we can do in a whole day of plane bombing, we can do this in a second with this bomb. And the emperor didn't want to give up. They had like people had to go to the emperor of Japan, like people within his regime or government, and tell him like, no, you don't understand. They threw this thing that made the city disappear. You have to give up because, bro, this guy, the emperor of Japan, he was like heir to like an actual samurai. And these people, like, they lived it. Like, they really believe, like, look, like, I'm not giving up. It's against my fucking samurai, whatever, ethics, So he wasn't going to give up until they told him, no, you need to give up or the Japan people will cease to exist. And then they had to explain it to him. And then, whatever, he quit. So they created this bomb, right? But without that, we wouldn't have been able, at least this is my opinion. No, I think that winning that war was so important for what we have today. Like we wouldn't have what we have today, which I think is a pretty nice world in comparison to what could have been. So it's hard to look at this because how do you justify a killing tool so powerful, so devastating, but that was able to, in a way, save humanity? Would you say that at the end, guns, they have no fault of their own, and even if we didn't have them, like we will still have sticks, we'll still try to kill each other one way or another. So really, it's just
guns don't kill people. People kill people. They just
people
enable us to do so.
People.
Or do you
people
think
always kill people? Oh, sorry. So the only thing is you have now empowered, like you just made it easier, right? So like, if you make the bomb, right, like the push of a button, it's just right. So you don't feel it. Like, I think if you go like some of the movies, like if you like were to stab someone, you can feel that as like it's happening, and you can feel instant regret. But if you're just like pew pew, or the bomb, you don't feel it. You see it, and it's like it doesn't feel the same way.
Like, oh,
it'll
shit.
take, like for example, when like if someone were to pass away, like they'll tell you like, oh, this person passed away. You're like, okay. It doesn't resonate until then you go to the funeral and then you see their body and you're like, then it hits, and it still could take a second, right? So if you have like these advanced weapons, you just don't feel the pain until after. Like the remorse isn't there because you just did the act.
Not at all. But sometimes I feel like,
yeah. Sometimes you're just like, what? I just did the
well,
thing.
I had to save my country. I had to do what I had to do.
So you're saying like it would be more moral if we kept it to more melee conflict?
Yeah, but it was melee because you feel a melee, right? Like you know what you're doing in the melee. You felt that. You felt the
sword.
Right, but
and
on the
shield
other end,
and
like the ways, the reason why some countries conquered others is because like, oh look, we found a way, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, John, to reach them without them reaching us, and that puts us in an advantageous position. And we're not here in the game of advantage of equal fighting. We're here to fuck you up. We don't,
right,
exactly.
And to that extent, it actually makes you an attacker and a defender because you never have to leave home. You just launch that shit and you're good to go.
And having the best attack saved up lets other people know like, hey, don't fuck with us. So it's like.
But then now all these motherfuckers got A-bombs too.
Right.
So then now what?
So then we just destroy. We eventually get to our demise.
Do you think this is like a simulation, right? Where like they put all these little ants, right? And then they start growing, they start making civilizations. And in some scenarios, it went one way. Some people became more aquatic. Some people became, and then there's our simulation, which is the one that we live in. But then eventually all of them get to the point where they, okay, boom, boom, boom. Oh, look, their choice of weapon was the nuclear. This is what fucking takes them out. And in another case, it was like some radiation shit that they took, or another one was like they contaminated all of the water. So like, because when you look at Gladiator and you look at the Roman Empire, you don't really think about it because we don't, like, the thing is, for me, it's hard to believe shit that's in the past. Like, I almost don't believe it. I'm like, yeah. But it's like, no, there's a Colosseum and these motherfuckers had a civilization that then was destroyed and doesn't exist anymore. So it's like, that could happen to what we have now.
I think we're focusing on the wrong details. We're focusing more on the weapons and why they were created. And the fact that they were created and whether or not they are useful tools for civilizations to grow or to die. The question is, why are we creating these weapons? Initially, we were creating the weapons for survival, right? To survive in the case of like an incoming country or like a little, village or whatever the fuck. Now, all these countries are formed and they're basically set. Like the borders are set. Everybody has their own little piece and shit. Why is there still this whole fighting thing? Like, what are we fighting for?
I think you're failing to see today's world with the right lens, because you're like, oh, now we have our little like today has a facade of like, it looks like everything is modern and different, but we're still playing the same fucking game that they were playing in the Roman Empire, right?
Just look what's happening with near toys.
Look what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. They want to get that little piece back because they had that shit back in the day. And they're like, yo, fuck that. That shit is ours. And you said, oh, originally we needed the weapons to defend if somebody wanted to come. Right? No, but go deeper. Go deeper with that. Before you need to defend, you need to have the reason why you even attack. So I think the whole thing might be, it's just we're naturally pieces of shit that are always going to want more resources than the ones we have. And if we see another tribe that by luck, their little piece of land that they had was next to a nicer river with nicer land, well, fuck them.
So you,
we're like
you go
monkeys.
ahead.
We're fucking monkeys that
you go ahead now. You take that little piece of river or land that you like. You liked it. And all right, cool. And then what? Now you have the river. Okay. So what was the point? Just to have access to that river? So in this case, are you fighting for
John,
power?
and live better, because I don't know if you know, back then they didn't have fucking Costco with the 150 combo with the hot dog and the soda. They needed the water so that they could have fresh water every day and not die. For example,
and a 48 pack of like Sefer Hill's little bottled waters and shit.
Yeah.
So we go to why we do this, right? That's the question. Why do we do this? So the reason, because we need resources, KIKO touched on, we need resources, right? Because we need certain things we just need. Like if somebody was on top of oil, like they're killing each other to get that oil. So that's one. The second is power. You don't want to be told what to do. Like, I'm in charge of my village. So like that's why we create, like, that's a society. We have our government, we have our defense systems for that. So it's resources and power, and they come together. When somebody feels they don't have their resources or they don't feel they have their power, you're going to do something about it. So that's when you switch into attack mode or get what you want, because if the diplomatic way doesn't work, then we turn to war. Just like when you have a conversation with someone and you're just getting nowhere and you're really getting mad, like we turn to the fists, because our monkey selves don't let us escape.
Right.
But then now you're fighting for resources and power that you don't have. So you're gonna probably lose, because the other country probably has those resources and has that power.
So
right, but how did you get to that point where you have the resources and power? You have to fuck up some other people.
You killed somebody else. Everyone's a cutthroat. They were all cutthroats. Somebody
at this point in the game, we just lucked out and landed wherever we landed, because we didn't go and colonize fucking all of the United States and shit, or all of Europe and all that bullshit. So we lucked out. But I guess back then, yeah, they would have had to have taken it over.
Yo, this is the thing though. This is the thing, and I'm gonna get a little conspiracy, a little bit. But check it out though. Like you're saying, like, oh, we locked out. We're in this world now where everything's different, and of course, a lot of things are different, but a lot of things are the same. We might not have a country like China attack us with boats and a bunch of, army people. No, but they might behind the scenes be influencing all of the movie and the media that we see, and that could be as strong as an attack or more.
My internet went out for like 6 hours yesterday. I was gonna call Biden shit and tell him like, yo, what's up with these Chinese people, bro? Why are they fucking with our internet?
Yeah, so I end on this. So Kiko's right on this. So like the tactics are different. So like we may not be able to use nuclear bombs anymore because we know if we use that, we are wrecked. So we got to change our critical way. So I'll give you an example. So like in China, TikTok is all about like engineering and like getting people smarter and doing smart things. That's what gets the votes. Here, the stupid things get the votes. Everything stupid dances and all that. Like, so that's like a terrorist attack on its own. It's a subtle, because it's not being an attack. It's more of like get your kids stupid and make our kids smart.
You know how like there's like that you've heard. I mean, I'm only heard. Okay, I love the Russian people, regardless of what the regime might be doing or not. So but you've heard of like how they might, in certain stories, how some people might have been killed, poisoned, and in a way where like they were poisoned on the tea for many months. So like it's very hard to trace. This is sort of like that. Like you're not coming and attacking our people right away, but you're doing it in a way where you're making them more dumb and dumb and dumb. So when the time comes, they don't know. So I think that's the final sort of place that we get here to, which is we're still in the same fight, and I think we're always gonna be in the same fight. It's just the veneer, or it's gonna look a little different. It might be a little more diplomatic, but we're still fucking stabbing each other one way or another.
We're still apes.
We're still apes.
Monkeys never leave.
We're still apes monkey. Trying to get more resources and be more comfortable. That's it. That's the bottom line.
So just keep holding on, because we're fucking apes.
These are my bananas.
Well, let us know.
My fucking bananas.
Let us know, broski doodles, what you think on this topic. If you feel that weapons are something that is needed or that it has helped us progress, or if there should be a different philosophy in our brain that leads us to live a more like hippie life where we're just fucking and drinking and eating shrooms. So
that's what China wants.
That might work.
That'll be an easy attack. Peace out, guys.